America is home to more than 4 millions of our kababayans. Washington is also among Manila's biggest trading partners and a staunch military ally. Let's get the insights of Curtis Chin from the Milken Institute of Asia and former U.S. ambassador to the Asian Development Bank. Curtis, thank you so much for joining us. How would you assess President Biden's pivot towards Southeast Asia in his first year in office?
Well, clearly when we think about that word, pivot, it didn't do so well under a prior president and actually was renamed from a pivot to a rebalance. But when we look at President Biden, clearly, as your introductory piece made clear, he has a lot of domestic challenges. And as in other countries, the focus is purely domestic right now. So sadly, that has meant not enough attention on Southeast Asia.
All right. We saw key foreign policy moves last year. In his first year in office, you have Afghanistan, you have Ukraine, focusing on Russia. Do you think that he will engage the region in year 2 as president?
I can only hope he will. There's some talk that there will be a meeting, an in-person meeting at one point of leaders from ASEAN at the start of the year. We're still seeing if that will happen. I think we also have to take a step back and recognize that it isn't simply meetings, and it cannot simply be a pivot that's focused on defense. This administration, as with prior administrations of both parties, really needs to up its economic game for Southeast Asia. Southeast Asia is such an important region, but when we look at the U.S.-China rivalry, which colors almost everything when we think about Asia, China has upped its game. I think you all know that at the start of this year, one of the largest trade deals took place. A lot of acronyms, RCEP, that kind of economic, regional cooperation, economic partnership involved China, did not involve the U.S. And so one specific example where President Biden can up his game is to rethink opportunities to engage in the area of trade, whether it's digital trade or it's services. There's so much that the United States could do more of in Southeast Asia. And that's a challenge that every president, these last couple of presidents have faced, and from my viewpoint, have not done enough. We need a business pivot to Asia. That's what America needs.
Well, the United States needs the trade and business in Southeast Asia. It is a huge market combined of 650 million people. And last year, Curtis, President Rodrigo Duterte finally put an end to uncertainty regarding the fate of the visiting forces agreement between both countries, which has led to the donation of millions of U.S. vaccine doses. From its policy statement and standpoint, how is President Duterte, in your view, being an old hand here in Asia, living here in the Philippines, how is he trying to balance relations between the two superpowers, China and the United States?
I think President Duterte, like every leader in Southeast Asia, is trying to walk that fine line. Neither China or United States really wants to almost cede territory to the other side, and so the countries there, they don't want to be that battleground. So I think Duterte, like others, is trying to balance both sides. But I think the reality is that the Filipino people, Filipino businesses know best who might be a better and more trustworthy partner. It doesn't mean either or one or the other, but it certainly means going with the people that you trust. And so when I think about the year ahead, again, going back to your first question about what President Biden could do, one thing we could clearly do is nominate a new U.S. ambassador to the Philippines, a new U.S. ambassador to Thailand, a new U.S. ambassador to ASEAN. Part of the challenge is showing up, but then we also need confirmed ambassadors in place. So my hope is that President Biden will move forward on these key appointments, who will be some of the on-the-ground drivers of U.S. policy in the Southeast Asian region.
And Curtis, in about 4.5 months' time, the Philippines will have a new president. How closely do you think is the Biden administration watching this presidential elections, which takes place amid the pandemic?
I can only hope that they're watching it closely. But the reality is the United States will work with whoever the Filipino people decide will be their president. My hope is that whoever that person is will also recognize that long time enduring relationship between the United States and the Philippines. And as you know, that there are so many Filipino Americans here. When you look at the latest U.S. Census data, Filipino Americans are number 3 behind Chinese Americans and Indian Americans, as kind of an Asian origin, Asian Americans here. So that enduring relationship also at the people level, my hope is that President Biden will certainly move forward on that. And I certainly hope there early on, there will be an in-person meeting between the United States and the Filipino presidents.
Thank you so much for your insights on U.S.-Philippine relations. Curtis Chin from the Milken Institute of Asia and the former U.S. ambassador to the Asian Development Bank.